So this is a history video again, and well, it's gonna cover up another misconception. If someone asked me which the greatest nation on earth has been, my answer would be pretty similar to someone like Tristan Tate. I would tell you that in terms of simple landmass and in terms of simple landmass and overall achievements and conquests and power, that would be the British Empire. Probably the second closest would be the Mongol Empire, because it's obvious. It's obvious. Like, there were cultures separated by thousands of kilometers, which did not know about each other's existence. Like, there's a tomb of a samurai in Japan, which commemorates his valor in battle against the Mongols. And way far on the other end of Eurasia, there's a mausoleum of a knight in Poland who had slain many Mongols in battle. Like, these two civilizations, they did not know each other, right? They did not know that they existed. But between them was the realm of Genghis Khan and sons and grandsons. They knew the terror of the Mongols. They both knew the terror of the Mongols. That's what united them. But regardless, I would usually agree that the British Empire was the greatest empire and the greatest nation on earth. But the problem is when people start adding other narratives, like the British civilized every single group of people. That's where I start taking issues with that. No, the British did not civilize every single area they conquered. This might partly be the truth about some parts of Northern America. This might be true about some parts of Africa, which were in fact civilizationally behind, and the British did introduce new inventions to those places. But honestly, can you say the same thing about India? You really cannot say the same thing about India, right? In fact, the funny thing is, if you constantly belittle your opponents, you kind of end up belittling your own victory. Like, what is the greatness in subduing and beating a bunch of savages and conquering their land? The truth is, there is much greater virtue in beating a civilization and taking 100 years to conquer all of its land, which is what the British did with India. And regardless, that is quite a feat. India was notoriously difficult to unite throughout human history. Only 3 times in recorded history has had India been united before the British set foot on the continent. Once was the Maurya Empire. Second was the Gupta Empire, which had a lot of tributaries in the south, and there was another major empire in India at the time who were in marital alliance with the Guptas. So that would be second. Vakatakas, right? The Vakataka queen was a Gupta, was the daughter of the Guptas, right? And daughter of the Gupta royal house, and she was the grand regent for 20 years. Prabhapati Gupta, you can go look it up. So that would be 2. The third was, of course, the Mughal Empire. There were other large empires which occupied most of the subcontinent at times. One would be the Marathas, and the other would be the Rashtrakuts. And Rashtrakuts are very interesting because Arab trader Suleiman described the Rashtrakuts as one of the 4 major powers of the world at that time. So this is me just nerding out about Indian history a little bit. Regardless, the point is, if it takes you 100 years to conquer a place, it's not a civilizational backwater. It simply isn't. It's nowhere behind you. And yeah, there's actually multiple examples of Indian kingdoms beating back European powers. The first, the Dutch Travancore War. Very good example. The Dutch beat back the British. So what the fuck did I just say? The Principality of Travancore beat back the Dutch. What the fuck was I saying? It's not Europe, right? There was another example of the first Anglo-Maratha War. The British were beaten back by the Marathas. And here's the funny thing, the British would probably never have conquered India if Maratha royal house was not divided into four clans and half of the clans siding with the British. So that is credit to the British where it is. But reality is what they really succeeded by is not being civilizationally more developed than India. They succeeded by political solidarity. Back in England, everyone was not fucking up the East India Company. Everyone was not backstabbing them. It was, in fact, in more or less supervision of the Queen, and in 1857 the Queen took over from it. The point I'm trying to make is a civilization which has a track record of beating back the Europeans is at that time not civilizationally behind them. Not at all. Now people would mention, oh, but the British built the railways, but the British did this, the British did that. Bro, the thing is, if the British had not conquered India, Indians would probably have done the same anyways. And where did British find all of the iron to make the railways? Certainly not from England. And it was at the expense of India that England could develop. It was at the expense of India itself that the railways could be built, right? Like, think about it. It was a century after the British set foot on India and conquering all of India that they built the railways. It wasn't like they already had railways and they introduced it to India and India did not have it. Like Shashi Tharoor has quite an interesting take on this. He says you cannot blame someone for not being able to catch the bus, but if you trample them under the bus, then you cannot blame them for not catching it. Was India treated like a legitimate part of the empire? Was India treated like a people who deserve equal recognition, respect, and no exploitation, just like the people of the British Isles were? Newsflash, the British were horrible at treating the non-British as, or at least the non-English, I would say, as human beings. That's what led to the Irish famine. That's what led to so many famines in India. That's what led to the great generational drain of resources from India. And that is what destroyed all of India's cultural practices. And then people would not even take part in martial arts. Society would degenerate because martial artists were, of course, and people who were trained with weapons would have been a threat to the British. Right? One cannot argue that the British were powerful and they did beat India, and more so than power, they were cunning and intelligent. No one can dispute that. But were they good at management? Were they non-selfish rulers? Were they efficient rulers in India? They weren't. And the funny part is, they didn't really ever leave. At least their ill management hasn't left this country since independence. Every single political party which has set foot in the parliament, they only care about their own people, just like the British only cared about their own people and not the people of India, at the cost of the people of India. And so do the politicians of India today. They don't care about the common Indian person. They care about the bitch they're sleeping with. They care about their family. They care about their brothers and stuff like that. So it's never really left India. When you say, oh, the British built the railways, no, the biggest contribution of the British to India is this horrible democracy. Let me tell you this straight up. Democracy doesn't work for a country like India. The only reason China is progressing is because it's a quasi-dictatorship. Countries as big as India, China, or Russia, they suffer when there's democracy. The United States is imploding at the seams. And Europe is slowly getting that as well as the population is increasing. Democracy is failing Europe. Democracy is also failing Europe as its population is increasing. The only reason the faults of democracy were not visible back then is because Europe had the boost from the resources. Of course, this is not true for every single country, right? Poland, the Eastern bloc countries, they did not have this. The Balkans, I'm not talking about all Europeans, I'm specifically talking about Western Europe, Anglosphere, and the West, right? And the rest of the West. So, as that resource boost has worn off over time, the failures of democracy are becoming more and more visible, especially with the increase in population. So, the only thing the British have left India with is ill management. It's ill management, and every single Indian politician, and it's not the fault of the British now, but they have followed in the footpaths, in the footsteps of the British. There is absolutely no doubt about that.